So here we are in Capture One, and we're going to go through the pictures that we did the day of the car crash. We're going to start out with the morning where we photographed the session by the river, and then I'm going to take you into the studio or the shoot where we photographed the car. Now, I want to talk a little bit about color. In the pre-production to this, I had a very sort of deliberate set of colors that I wanted to execute for this. There's a cyan greenish tone to the background, and we styled this with a red warmer tone dress to create that contrast between cyan and red that you see opposite each other on the color wheel. Very important. What I have on the screen on the right side is a neutral captured scene. So if you see up here, it's at 5500 Kelvin. So no other changes is done to this. It's completely neutral, raw, 5500 just about. Now this feels too warm, and putting a red dress into that won't really pop as much. We want to work with the color in post to enhance that contrast of tone that we want to accomplish from the original idea that we set out to do. So let's then move to this side, and I'm just going to select this here. Way down on the Kelvin to a 3332. Again, this is kind of random. What we know though, however, that 33 is a very cool tone when it comes to natural light. So I pull that down, and I think that's pretty much all the settings we have. I increased the saturation a bit. As in pulling it down, I just wanted to re-pop some of that tone in it. So that's all the settings we had. When we photographed this, you saw these frames come in, and if you paid attention on the screen grabs from that day, you could see that it first popped up with this color, and then it quickly changed into this. And that is just the Capture One engine getting the raw files in, and then seconds later applying that tonality. So again, we're being very intentional with what we want to try to accomplish. On the right is our neutral. On the left is more what we want to create. We want to be deliberate with our color, not changing it completely, but working with the tonalities of the space. We wanted that overcast look. We wanted it to be kind of moody. The crash is not all that uplifting, and the frame on the left is closer to where we want to be by far than the right one is. So just want to show you quickly what I do to set the feel a little bit on location. Obviously, if you're really strong in your imagination, you could just shoot like this knowing that you want to change it. But for me, taking these pictures, I'm a visual guy, and I like to do these settings while I'm on set so that I get a little bit of better sense of what the final image is going to be like. This is actually pretty close. Remember, on location I talked about wanting this right side frame. One is these leaves in the foreground, and then we talked about taking away this bank here of sand so that we could expand this a little bit and put more water there, and that's exactly what we ended up doing. I'm going to take you through the pictures a little bit so you could see a little bit of my thought process in this. It seems kind of scattered, but on the Tech Scout, I did decide for this area. And I'm not sure if this is the actual frame that I chose to retouch, but it's pretty darn close to being in this area. I think maybe I was a tiny bit closer for my final select. But even if this is my select, and I mentioned on set that I did not like this as much, I wanted to replace the foreground, that means I go and shoot a lot of different plates that could be this foreground element. I also saw some fences that could symbolize a road that was up there that the car came from. So we're going to change this a little bit, use this as our framework, and then we're going to add a couple of layers to it when we get into the retouch. So let me just go through some of these so that you could see some of the frames. The process when I shoot is to create the background plate so that I have some idea of what was going on. These rocks, for instance, is something that I really, really liked for the left. Ended up not using these because they felt too strong, but part of what I explored to use just then this left side to add to that background that we had. Such a beautiful place, and there's a lot of beautiful landscapes here, but I didn't really want it to be all that beautiful either. So these spaces, again, I'm going to use some of these rocks here as a foreground for the second background that we're going to use for you, so that you could shoot a person coming through this water when you go ahead and you shoot your foreground element. So again, really excited about this, how we are going to combine our things together. Again, it's learning by doing rather than me just giving you all these files and just watching what I do. It's not the same. So please really consider diving in and doing these pictures with me. So I'm not going to scroll through all these, as you've already been with me on location and you've seen a lot of these captures on the screen. But just want to mention, I come in and I shoot background plates and I build this scene in my mind, really, with a piece here and a piece there, and this is the main part. When I know that, I go into shooting talent, and then I give talent a break and I go into shooting backgrounds again. So we come in here and I'm shooting more backgrounds, more foreground elements. We shoot smoke, and then I go into another session with the talent when they're warmed up and they feel a little bit better. So I'm going to come into shortly here. Oh, here are the fences I talked about, which was cool. Captured some of this as well, just so I would have an idea of where there would be a road. And by the way, this came from Rob Grimm. He's like, look at that fence. He got engaged in the process and said, oh, that could be the road. And I'm always open to great ideas. As you saw when it came to photographing the model in the car, a lot of those ideas came from the stylist, talking about where she would lay and where she would be. So I'm always open to thinking what other people are up to and what they think could make for a better photograph. I don't have any ego in, oh, it has to be my idea. Photography is a collaboration among many. Rarely is it just you that brings something to it. You set the stage, you set the idea, you want to fulfill a vision, but when it comes to the actual execution of it, letting other artists, like the hair and makeup, like the stylist, like the assistant, participate in that process just makes it so much more rewarding to me. So a little bit of a thanks to Rob Grimm there for pointing out those fences and actually incorporating that in the end product. Again, exploring foreground bars, different landscapes that I might be able to use. Then we came into this, where I wanted to put this white card behind to make it easy for me to block out. I already retouched this quickly so that I can get a sense preparing for the retouch that we're going to do together. And they weren't that hard to cut out, to be honest. If you see here, these leaves have all these highlights. So it's set pretty dark against the background, so it wasn't that hard. So I did this to make it easier for myself, but ended up mostly just using these plates that was already in the picture. So you're going to see me not using these most likely, but the intention of having this card behind was to make my cutout easier. So maybe I'll pull some of these in case. So actually, as I say that, we're just going to look right here real quick, and you can see me how I process these pictures. High-res Canon, 110%, and I'm just going to hit Command D, which in this software is Command Develop, and developing this raw file. So now I have some of these grass leaves cut out, and now become truly into the frames that I think I used. This looks pretty much right as the images that I already have processed, and we're going to start stitching together in a second. So more background plates, and then again into shooting our talent, giving her another session. And often when I do this, it's great to give talent a break, for them to reset, but also for me to reset, to look at the pictures I've gotten, to find what it is that I'm missing. What else can I photograph? As you see, I gave the talent a lot of compliments. Two reasons. I always give compliments because I think it makes them feel better about what they're doing, instead of being, oh, this is not so good, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this, let's try that. That will give them a lot of insecurities about the process and them not, doing the right thing. So I try to give a lot of encouragement, but I still seek something. I mean, we photographed a lot of frames here, so there was still a little something that I felt was missing. So I kept pushing and I kept pushing and I kept pushing. And in the end, we had a lot of great frames to choose from in this. So another session of the talent, and I think you get the process now. There's going to be some more landscapes here in the end, and here we are with even more of these backgrounds and more smoke. All right, so this was the morning where we photographed at the river, and then we're going to come into these folders here, and then I'm going to come into our, let me see, I'm going to scroll down here, and we're going to come into the studio to our capture folder. And so here we are at Automania in Oakland, where they have all these great cars, and they were gracious enough to let us use their space. And I talked through this whole process, really, so I'm not going to go through these as thorough. I mentioned this story that started unfolding. The woman looked just beautiful, Anamika, and as I started photographing her, just exploring, just realized that there's a story unfolding here. There's these close-ups in the car. I just kept exploring. It felt like, oh, she was going somewhere. And I don't know, it just really turned out well, I felt. So beyond just the crash, actual physical crash image, I wanted to shoot 2 pictures. One of her walking away from the car, one of her being in the car, and those 2 we did and executed. But then there was all these other pictures. I love old cars, and I obviously are attracted to beauty in any case, and I find there's beauty in design of old cars, there's beauty in women and all that stuff. So here's 2 things that get me excited when I take pictures. So I just want to scroll through these. It's me really exploring a lot. There's barely any frames here with the same perspective. This was all handheld, just smoke, no smoke, her looking, trying to create some cinematic moments that described some of that feeling, maybe the moments that was leading up to the car crash. What happened there? Was she escaping someone? Was she having fun? Was it, all these questions triggers creativity, and it will lead you somewhere. So again, I mentioned this, ask yourself what is happening before, what is happening after, create your story around that one moment that you're trying to create. So just going to go through these really quick for you to see. So I'm going line by line here. Then we came into getting the car into place. There's some exploration there, and this is where I started. And then you saw me put this quickly into the background, and I realized it was too much side view on the car, and I ended up coming around and we photographed it way more from the front. And this is some of the stuff that I explored with her in the car, different emotions, inside, outside, different levels of smoke. And again, like my old mentor said, it's all in the numbers. So just shooting a lot of pictures here. We had 1,400 images captured in the morning at the river, and here we have 1,045. So obviously very different than the days where I shot film, where we would photograph, a few hundred sheets of 4x5, and that would be it. I would walk home with 200 pictures. So digital is great that way. You really get to explore and push and push and push and try to capture something that's better than the one that you captured right before. So this is the process. Again, the guys at RGG did a beautiful job capturing all this. So I think you have a fair sense of my thought process, what happened, what we were looking for. And again, this picture this idea of her sitting up front came from my stylist. This is something that she wanted. And I could see how she wanted it because the dress here is front and center. Now, look at the color palette of this. We talked about the opposite on the color wheel, yeah? Cyans here, a red-orange here. This dress, I'll probably tone down to make it redder so that it even sits more despairingly, more opposite on the color wheel. Again, go to color.adobe.com and check that out. It's a magnificent tool in exploring and understanding color. And we're going to talk more about that as soon as we come into the retouch, where we're going to explore actually the way we see things when we try to put composite elements together. Obviously, color is a big component to that, matching this color to the background color. And before I end this session, I'm going to take a quick look at that because, again, we're going to come into this menu here. We have pulled down quite a bit on our Kelvin, making it bluer, and then also on our tint, making this greener to try to match the tone we had in the background. If I now hit Command R, which is resetting this file, you will see, and we put this at 5500, you will see that we have a very different color going on into this than what we have in the frame next to it. Again, this is set to try to match the tone that we had when we were in the forest so that it's easier for me when I process these files to lean into them and match this tone that we had at the river. Now again, originally, this is not that far from what we had at the river when we had the neutral 5500 Kelvin there as well. So we have kind of matched it a little bit. 1, to match the mood, 2, to match the 2 files together, and working with opposing colors on the color wheel when we styled the woman. Very deliberate, and we knew about that coming into it, and we talked about that in the upfront post-production. So I think that's it for me exploring Capture One and all the files that we grabbed coming up to this. So we're gonna jump into Photoshop, and we're really gonna start stitching this piece together. I'll see you there.